5 more minutes, and then we'll stop. So where does this lead us now? Because basically this is sort of the world up until the 1980s. A world which was highly international but still very national. A world that was, it's wrong to, what we call in the book first globalization. Because in fact you cannot understand this without globalization, but it's a different globalization. What we are now saying is that there's a second globalization. The second globalization is in fact one that is starting to break up the sports spaces of these respective continents. Okay? That in fact, in Europe, you have the arrival or the beginning, the nascent, it's still not, of, in this case, the American sports languages, the NBA, the NFL. And in the United States or North America, you have the arrival of soccer, okay, as a form of sports language. How is this possible? It's possible because of the new media. And it's possible by the fact that, above all, the internet literally renders sports and space and time irrelevant. So when I taught this huge sports course at the University of Vienna this past May, I was absolutely stunned by how kids walk in with, Green Bay Packers belts and Montreal Canadiens jerseys and whatever. And it's not only the jerseys. They are, in fact, conversant with them. They know this. Just like my students in Michigan now are Barca fans or Milan fans, and they know about them and they follow it. And in other words, they're starting to become cognizant of these languages, precisely because it doesn't matter where you live, you can watch any team anytime. Just to give you one example, when I was for the longest time, lived in Cambridge for 2 decades, it was very hard for me to follow my beloved Man U, or I had to wait for a couple of days, or to read Gazzetta dello Sport. I had to go to the Harvard kiosk. The newspaper came 6-7 days late. It was a chore. You really had to, it was a difficult thing. Okay? Today, you can watch anything, anywhere. Okay? Last point. This is a world, of course, of still, interestingly, a world of the people, meaning that they are, it's still a world of not industrial proletarians anymore, but still a world of the other half. Okay? By the way, my absolute conviction, I can't quite prove this because I haven't done it, I'm an empiricist, but I'm absolutely convinced that the reason the stuff that I do is, totally wonderful, but this is a full professor's project, okay? One of my graduate students is kind of making noise about doing a serious study of some sports, and I told him absolutely not. My point being that the disdain for this in academia, in my view, has a lot to do with the fact that it is indeed still a language of the masses. And in fact, an unsexy language of the masses. Okay? A one that is actually still plebeian, even though we actually, cultural studies revels in studying, of course, plebeian things, but not this. And another reason, of course, is that it indeed still excludes a major group of humanity, namely women, or put differently, it has women as still kind of as marginal or newly arrived actors. Very briefly, and then I'll end with this. Women actually are first participating, for example, in soccer already in the late 19th century. In England, in Sweden, in Germany, in the US, actually. And what happens is that first after World War I, there's a massive backlash, and women are excluded. Okay? And then actually, interesting, after World War II. So for example, the FA actually forbids women to play on its grounds. This is a serious handicap, I will submit. Okay? So women actually were on the production side, on the doers, completely marginal, which meant, of course, that they were absolutely non-existent in the world of consumers or of followers. Okay? This changes rapidly in the 1970s with the second wave of feminization, of feminism, which we actually see in the book very much coinciding with the second globalization, okay? Where suddenly women on the production side have become almost men's equals. It's unbelievable. If you look at the Olympics, it's almost every discipline. If you look at women's participants in college, phenomenal, college sports. And yet, okay, and this is what I'd like to end with, interestingly, of course, they of course are almost equivalent in producing, but not in consuming, or they consume differently. Okay? And as I argue in a fairly provocative piece, at least about the United States, it's interestingly the last bastion known to me and to others, I would assume, of completely legitimate, separate but equal. But only in sports do we accept complete gender separation. We would never accept a female department of physics at the University of Michigan, the way we do one for water polo. Okay? And I don't know of any feminist who actually, I know many feminists who want the President of the United States to be a woman, almost was and will be, who wants the president of Harvard and Michigan and Penn and Princeton, all of which have women, are presidents. Okay, but I've never heard anyone say we want the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers to be a woman, okay? Or the point guard of the LA Lakers. Why not? Okay? So what is interesting here, and this is what I'm doing in the seminar now, is to look at how this might be possible. Is it ultimately an issue of, why is the issue of physicality actually one that separates this? And last point, in Europe, this is, especially about soccer, a completely different world. In the United States, women, and in North America also, in Canada less so, but in the United States, women have become the best soccer players in the world. Why? Because that was a space left empty to them by the men. Men just didn't care. Okay? Women in Europe have a much harder road to hoe because, in fact, it's occupied by them. Okay? So, in fact, the greatest pleasure for me was that the book, by the way, I have 4 copies, and just to give away, whoever wants, hopefully students. The greatest honor for me is that the first person to blurb this book phenomenally is Brandi Chastain, who everyone knows in the United States only by this, okay, because of course she took off her jersey, excuse me, which of course was immediately interpreted, nothing like this would ever happen to a man, and that was very common in soccer language at the time. Everybody did it. Okay, but to her it was immediately either sexualized or in fact kind of diabolized, whatever, in the sense that she did it because she was wearing the newest Nike sports bra, and in fact it was kind of an advert for it. Okay? So Brandi Chastain, whose farewell game is in fact tomorrow in Santa Clara, and I declined to go because I came here, so. But Brandi Chastain, Princeton University Press wanted, of course, the likes of Peter Katzenstein and the legendary Modris Ecksteins, whom I'll see tomorrow, the great historian at the University of Toronto, to be #1. And one thing I insisted on, no, on this sports book and on my book, it's Brandi Chastain over Katzenstein and Ecksteins. Okay, so there you have it. I'm open for questions.